I don't know about you, but I select a word of the year every year, and 2023 my word was connection. And I've been working this year to make a whole bunch of new connections, and one of the amazing connections that I happened to meet through Facebook was our guest for today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Hailey Rowe, marketing and sales coach. Hi, Hailey. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. And I love that your word was connection because it's so important in business. It's the start of everything.
Absolutely. Connection is currency. One of my coaches, one of my mentors taught me. So Hi, welcome to Sincerely Speaking. I'm Marcia Amaro, your self-leadership coach. Now what that means is I'm here to help you rediscover your calling, tap into your greatest potential and strengths, and eliminate those things that keep getting in your way and in the way of your success. So whatever success looks like to you, whether it is in your career, in your business, in your relationships, or in your life in general, I'm here to help you get out of your own way, remove the obstacles, and elevate all of your life to the next level. If you're ready to see everything that you're capable of and see what your life can look like, I invite you to head on over to marciamara.com and set up a 30-minute clarity and confidence call where we will talk about your mission, your vision, your goals, the things that you're here on this planet to create, what might be getting in the way up until now, and some actionable, amazing ways to get out of your own way to eliminate all those obstacles and reach the level of success that you've been dreaming of. Are you ready? Are you ready for the next level? Then stick around to this conversation of Sincerely Speaking and then head on over to marciamara.com and schedule your 30-minute call. Can't wait to meet you in person. Chat soon. So, what do we start where I start with most of my guests, just asking them to share with us how you got started and what you do and what exactly is that you do?
Yeah. So I'm a marketing and sales coach and consultant, and I'm also a certified life coach. And so I help my clients with both the strategic changes they need to make in their business to be able to make more sales, be able to streamline some of their processes that are taking them a long time. But at the same time, with the life coaching background, I help them actually implement and break it down and follow through and not let social media overwhelm or feeling like a dinosaur with technology or other things like that to get in the way of their progress. So that is a little bit about what I do.
How did you get into that?
I got into it. So I had always had an interest in having my own business, and just the autonomy. I grew up like a performer and having to go on auditions and get rejected a lot. And so I built up like a thick skin. And in 2017, well, I'll start a little earlier. So I ended up getting my bachelor's in entrepreneurship.
Mm.
And I started to work at startups in business development and marketing after college. And I loved it. I thought it was really interesting to work in a fast-paced environment and you had to figure things out very quickly. I felt very um, overloaded in what their expectations were of me as a fresh college graduate. Like they would give me things that I was like, wait, so you really think I'm qualified to do this? You're like, oh, could you interview these people, or could you write the copy for this page, or could you create a manual? Like I even created a manual for one of these companies for their employees. I was like, why? What? But that's how startups work. You have to
Mhm.
figure it out. You're moving quick. And what I realized, because I had told myself, oh, I'm not ready to start my own business yet. I have to work at these startups and get experience. And when I was working there, I realized nobody has it all figured out. And you just have to
Mhm.
figure it out as you go. And there's never a perfect time. If you're going to do something and you want to do something, you should just start now and get your hands dirty and figure it out. And so in 2017, one of the companies that I worked for had to let everybody go because they had a bunch of delays. They did hire on too fast. And I just started to work individually with people who help in a service-based type of role. So a lot of online service providers, a lot of coaches, a lot of wellness-based businesses. I've even done talks, and you were mentioning realtors. I've worked with a lot of realtors. So I kind of got into that in 2017, and I started very niched down, and I've kind of, even though my niche is still, out there, I've kind of expanded throughout the years. So it's been kind of a fun journey.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I would love to go back to something that you mentioned because I know that the people who listen to this podcast tend to struggle with the getting started piece, right? Like the momentum and the follow through and those types of things. And you mentioned thinking, Did you really think I was qualified for this, or something along those lines? So let's talk a little bit about getting started without feeling qualified when you don't feel like you're really the right person necessarily for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things there. One, I think so often our brains naturally go to everything wrong with us, everything we're lacking, all the skills we don't have. And you have to be willing to also equally see all the reasons why you are qualified. What skills do you have that you can leverage or milk to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big thing here is if you want to see yourself as qualified, you have to become that person and it like practice and do it bad at first. So if it makes you feel better, have a test group, do
Mm-hmm.
your service for free, or get feedback from your audience to learn what they want help with and see which ones you do feel qualified. What things do you feel qualified to help with? So I think it's a combination because like I think sometimes people say, oh, fake it till you make it, and you shouldn't have imposter syndrome and all that stuff. And I think, no, we actually do want to see what are you qualified to help with? Like, what are your strengths? What are the ways you could be resourceful to learn whatever it is you do want to offer and do that, but at the same time, on a mindset confident level, in order to get better at it, you have to practice. So do a test group or take a certification or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think that will help a lot.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned is that everybody wants to have a large audience and do all these massive things at first, but at first we all suck. So
Yeah,
it's
don't make
actually
us it.
right. It's
Yeah.
actually a good thing to not have a large audience at first because you're going to be kind of sucky at the beginning. So embrace it, practice, and get better as you go.
Yeah, I got to put the reps in.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at the idea of starting something new and launching into something that you haven't done before, one of the things that people I think get stuck on is they want to be 100% clear on something that they've never done before. Have you encountered something similar?
Oh yeah, I think that happens a lot.
So how do we help them understand that that's not necessarily going to happen?
So how do we help them figure out what something they've never done before? Like,
Like
that?
understand that is they're not going to have 100% clarity, right? So
Oh
just
yeah, right.
how
So
do they launch into it?
yeah, I think the thing is like clarity becomes more clear by you actually getting out in the field and realizing what you like and what you don't like. So I'm years into my business and I still don't have every single thing figured out. I still have had new clarity this year about like, oh, interesting. I really think this offer messaging needs to be tweaked to this, or I really don't want to offer this anymore. And like, so it's an ever evolving thing.
Yeah.
But I think so many people reject themselves or defeat themselves before they even start just by saying like, well, I don't want to do it wrong. Or like, I hear this all the time, like, I don't want to work with a coach until I figure out blah, blah, blah. And the thing that a coach helps you with
Is
is
figuring
blah,
it
blah,
out.
blah. Yeah. So like that is the process. So you have to decide, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to wait until you have, I hear this other thing, like, I don't want to start my business or like do X, Y, and Z until my calendar is clear and like I can really give it my full attention and soccer practice is over for the kids. And it's like, that's never, there's always going to be a new thing.
Hmm.
You have to learn how to do it with that stuff.
Absolutely.
So, and you have to be willing to do it messy and look bad sometimes in the beginning. You
Hmm.
can't, the greatest people who have made it in entrepreneurship, they have made mistakes. They've made typos. They've sent the wrong thing out. They've had failed launches. You don't get to skip all of that. You have
Hmm.
to have that too. So
Absolutely.
coming to terms with that.
Yeah, it's like trying to run before learning to crawl, right?
Exactly.
So when we're talking about starting up and doing something that's brand new, one of the things that trips people up, and you kind of mentioned that when I asked the last question, is where do I start? So for
Mhm.
someone who is looking to transition into something, whatever that might look like, what would you suggest as a good place to start up and to get moving?
Right. Well, I think this will be nuanced depending on like what their background is and where they're at with starting. But for most people, you have to start with what is the vision I have for having my own business? Like, so what's important to you? Is it your time? Are you starting this to make a certain impact and you have a certain mission? what strengths do you want to bring into your business? What's your style as far as like communication and what your brand might be? And then from there, you want to think about you want to find that like balance of what are your skills, what does the market want, and what are they willing to pay for, and who needs it, and who
Mm-hmm.
do you want to work with? Because so the first step would be with that, like, okay, what is going to be your target audience and what is going to be your offer? And I think a lot of people skip the process of seeing if the offer is wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to do that. Just because you think something would be cool or you have a really good idea that this sounds really fun, you do want, before you go create the whole thing, you really do want to get feedback about how does your target audience, in their own words, describe what they would pay to solve right now? What's urgent to them? And sometimes you're on the right track. Like I've had clients who are like, oh, I want to help people with their life purpose and stuff. And that's great. And some people will be in a place where they're like ready to dive into that. But most of the time, we're very short-term oriented, and people are like, I need to get a promotion, or I need to focus on, um, whatever it is, like, I, I don't know, something more narrow and specific instead of something broad and vague like that. So I think a lot of people make the mistake of like, I'm going to make this whole offer, I'm going to put up my all into it, and then I'm going to launch it and see what happens. I think you should see what people want, maybe even get a few people to pre-purchase or pre-commit, and then make it with them and get the feedback and make sure it's wanted.
Now, do you have something specific that you suggest so people can do that market research so that they don't go in blind?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things. One is you could interview people and you could just offer a thank you gift of some
Mm-hmm.
kind for them taking the time. And you want the thank you gift to not be like a free Amazon gift card, because everybody will want that and everybody will just try to get through the interview and like not give you their honest answer. You kind of want it to be like maybe you do a phone interview or Zoom interview, and the thank you is a free coaching session of the topic that you want to coach on, if you're a coach. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you're a realtor or something and you're trying to get feedback about who you want to serve and whatnot, maybe you go in your area and you look at like forums. Like I think about, for example, like in my area, we have a events website that people post on. We have neighbors, Nextdoor app, neighbors app, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could look at that kind of stuff and see what are people posting about, or what are people, complaining about with their house or whatever. And there's even like local Facebook groups, like where people are posting. So I think it would be good to either interview them or go to a source, like a community or a group or a thing you can read, forums,
Mm-hmm.
and see what people are saying. That can be another good way to check things.
No, that's awesome. And now, one of the things that I think we might have in common is that we understand that regardless of what area you're trying to grow, leadership is a big part of the whole thing, right? Like this whole scope of achievement and success and all these things. What is it that you particularly look at when you're looking at, okay, I think I might be a good leader, I think I might be doing okay, but I would love to expand my leadership and use it to succeed? What are some of the things that you look at in that area?
Yeah. Well, I think just being a lifelong learner and having a beginner's mindset is really important. I think a lot of people, if anybody gives you an answer like, this is what the answer is for everyone, and know it, I think that's a sign of like, maybe not. Like there's so many nuances, and I think leadership is being open to
Mhm.
different perspectives and being able to customize things and being just realizing you don't know everything. That's the
Mhm.
first. The second thing is being solutions oriented is huge, especially in entrepreneurship and leadership. If you are somebody who always immediately goes to, why is this so hard? Why do these people not like me? Why is technology so difficult? Instead, what you want to be asking and training your brain to ask are open, solution-oriented
Mhm.
questions. Like, what is right with me? What is right with my business? Who can I reach out to get help with this? More positive questions is really important. And I'm not saying like ignore problems. I
Mhm.
think you should look at your challenges, but turn immediately to what can I do about it is really important. And then I think the other thing is being willing to refine until something works. So a
Mm,
lot of times people set a goal, get shiny object syndrome, or get excited about all these new different things they could do, get off track, totally forget about the original goal, set
hmm
a new goal, think that that goal wasn't for them because it wasn't working within 2 weeks, etc. And what I like to do is think about the term massive action, which doesn't mean hustling yourself or burning yourself out, but it means being willing, setting a goal and being willing to refine and focus until it works, until you get there. And the last thing I would say is like being coachable. So that kind of goes back to just realizing you don't know everything.
hmm
I think it's important to expose yourself to feedback and take in constructive feedback, things like that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I find too, and tell me if you find the same thing, is that at the beginning, we feel this pressure to do all the things. Now,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking a little bit about shiny object syndrome and all that, but there's also this pressure to do all the things, especially when it comes to social media and marketing and all these other things. What advice or how can we start shifting how we look at this idea that we need to be everywhere and do all the things? Or do you think we need to be everywhere and do all the things? What's your take on that?
I like, I don't know where I heard this quote, but it's like you can have it all, but not all at once,
Mm.
right? So you can do everything, but not all the time. So I think the key is to prioritize and become a really amazing person who can prioritize what is most important and what will be the lowest hanging fruit and what will have the most output for the one input and
Mhm.
put that first. And then when you can get a flow with that or get a system with that or delegate that, then you can keep expanding to other things.
Okay, so for someone who is like already trying to do it all, and now they're listening and they're hearing and they're thinking, wait a minute. I've been doing Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Threads and blah, 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 all these other things that are out there. How do I pick the one to focus on so that I can get good at it?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. One is you can just look at what seems the most promising as far as, or what has shown to be the most promising if you've already been doing it, as far as getting you the goals or results or traction that you're looking for. So for me, I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform. I get the most calls from it. I get the most clients from it. Not from my content, from lead generation, from building relationships. And so for me, I put that first. I check those messages before other social media platforms. I think you got to look at what's already indicating it could work. What are you going to stick with? So if you know you love doing videos and like short things and your audience is young, okay, well, TikTok maybe would
Mhm.
make sense. But if you're like, I hate videos, I'd rather write things. I'm more professional. I want to connect with other business owners. Okay, well, then LinkedIn might
Mhm.
make sense. So what you like and what you could stick with. And then I think the last thing would be what could you systematize the fastest? Like, so it's kind of hard to, like, for example, I have not found a way to have somebody help me answer my messages yet on social media platforms the way that I'd like. I
Mhm.
haven't trained them yet, et cetera. But if it's something that's the most promising, and so it's something where I want to keep doing that and try to make that into a system. So I think those are things to consider. Um, yeah, I think that would be a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding your audience too a little bit, right? Because I love creating short form video, but TikTok is not the best platform for me because the people that I'm going after don't
Mhm.
necessarily go to TikTok looking for that type of connection. If they go in there, they go to clear their minds and do something mindless for a little bit, scroll,
Uh,
and they're not
exactly.
looking for anything
That's a
else.
big thing to consider. Like even Instagram and Facebook, people usually go there for entertainment.
Mhm.
LinkedIn, people go for business, right?
Mhm.
So if you're like really serious about business, I'm a little biased, but I love LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've had a hard time with LinkedIn, but we can talk about that later. And I think
Um,
it's just a matter of personality sometimes too,
yeah.
like the way you approach things. But so when we're looking at elevating our leadership because we're trying these new things or because we're trying to systematize things, like even creating systems that are streamlined and that you can follow through on, require your leadership and require you making decisions and connecting with your vision, right? But in the sense of eliminating overwhelm and figuring out how do I balance all these things, or how do I get to a space where I know I can do it all? What are some of the things to keep in mind and consider when looking at that stage of I just want to eliminate overwhelm but continue with my systems?
Yeah. So one thing I do is I have like my what I call like my daily basics list and or weekly basics list. And it's something that I have a target for every week. I want to do my content. I want to do a certain number of connections. I want to do editing my what one of my goals right now is I'm making some edits to my course. So that's on there for now. That's not a permanent basic, but for
Mhm.
now in this sprint, that's what it is. So I think coming up with like what is your weekly or daily basics? And for those, how often? What are the exceptions of when you're okay with not doing those things?
Mhm.
And how are you going to track it? And so for me, I use the Goal Streaks app. And I can see how consistent I've been with my basics that way, which is really nice because then you're like, oh, wow, I've missed my bedtime 7 days in a row, but like I'm crushing it on my content or whatever. So I think those are the things you need to consider if you want to get out of overwhelm and into like an action plan. I also think with overwhelm happens from either poor planning, expecting too much of yourself. So putting something really vague on there. So even content is way too vague.
Mhm.
I have it broken down to like each day I want to share one client win in my stories, one, post. Like I have it broken down. So
Mhm.
give yourself something that's not like it's anytime you're giving yourself a task or you're planning what are your weekly basics, make sure it's something you could check off within 30 minutes or less. And that it's something not like edit my whole website, edit or write book. Like, okay, but like our chapter one, like 2 pages, what are we talking about here? Because then people get defeated and they
Yeah.
beat themselves up and then they stop doing it. Versus you want to, I think a lot of people think if I want that motivation. And so I'm gonna like try to like stretch myself and really make it hard. And versus if they break it down to something really easy and they actually show that they can create a promise with themselves and execute on it, that builds confidence. So start small. Start with something like this feels almost too easy, and then do it and be like, dang, I'm good at I do what I say I'm gonna do. That's what we ultimately want to get to.
Yeah, and I think something that you mentioned that's really, really important is in the planning stages, think about the exceptions when you're going to be okay with not doing it, right? Because one of the things that I know for myself and for a lot of my clients is we are so keen on being consistent that we beat ourselves up then for any little thing that gets us off track. And then it's like, okay, what's the point? And so we give up completely. And that was my tendency. And that's one of the things that I worked on a lot at the beginning. And I see that a lot in my clients. So I think it's awesome that you mention exceptions because then you know, okay, I'm human, I'm
Yep.
living, life
Yep.
happens. And
Yeah.
when life happens, I need to be okay with life happening sometimes, right? And it's not that you're going to use that as an excuse, but understanding, okay, I have kids, there might be an event or a moment in which my kid needs me. That's the priority. So if I need to give this up for my kid, then that's okay. Just as an example, right? But I love that you have that on there.
Yeah, we get to define what consistency means. And it sometimes doesn't make sense to say consistency means me doing this every single day, 7 days a week. Like, what about weekends? What about if your kids are sick, right?
Mhm.
You got to define those so that you don't feel bad. And also so it's clear. Like,
Yeah.
so if it's not an exception day and you didn't do it, well, then we can look at, oh, well, what distraction got in the way or how can you keep improving?
Yeah, that's also key because when we fall into those spaces, when we're getting into exceptions, it's key, I think, to go back and examine, okay, what was the exception? If it wasn't a pre-planned for exception, then what was it that happened? How can I prevent it from happening some other time, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's really cool. So when it comes to managing your time around all these tasks, because that's another thing, right? It's okay. So now, especially if it's a side hustle that people are starting or things along those lines, I hear that objection a lot. And I don't have the time. I end up working 20 out of the 24 hours of the day, blah, 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 blah. Do you have any suggestions for people on how to make time manageable in these sense?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, I think part of it, I think part of it is you have to come up with a system that works for you. So for me, I keep a phone notes thing on my phone. I don't have a spreadsheet. I don't have 12 different to-do lists on paper all over my house. Like I've had to find this one works for me because I can, when I come up with an idea in the grocery store that I have to write down, I can do it. It's accessible to me. So I think the first thing is ask yourself, what are you truly going to stick with when it comes to getting your thoughts and all your to-dos and all the things that you need to put into your calendar? Like where can you keep all of that for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
have a place where you keep it instead of your head? That's really important. And
Yep.
then the other part is organizing it and breaking it down into a way that makes sense for you. Like, so for me, I have like my top priority things that are aligned with my goals that I got to do for the week. I have my someday or later list, which is like, this would be really nice, but there's no consequences if I don't do it right now. And it's also not really that important. So like having those categories. And then I think the last thing is time yourself. I use this app called Toggle.
Mm.
And I'm timing this interview right now. Why? Because I like, as an entrepreneur and your own boss, at the end of the week, it sends you a report of how you spent your time for the week. And you're able to see, like, wow, I am taking a long time on content, or wow, I know on average my client support hours are this many hours. And so you can start to more realistically plan your day and your calendar and what you can actually accomplish when you actually know how long things take you. And most people are like, it's kind of like food and calories. Like some people are like, I would never want to track that. That's way too, you know, restrictive. And I get that. And same thing with time, like, oh, it's so restrictive. But I think it's more of a tool, as long as you don't beat yourself up about it, to actually know, like it's good to just know
Mhm.
how much time you're spending on things. Because then if you don't like it, you're actually able to like change it and track it versus just saying like, oh, I hate how this takes me so much time. And then it continues to just get in the way and keep happening.
No, absolutely. And it's also a matter of awareness, I find too. Like you were comparing it to calories. You don't have to count calories for the rest of your life,
Right.
but the more you get into the practice of it, the more it becomes almost instinctive, right? Like you can look at it and be like, oh, that's about this many calories. Do I really want to invest in that or not? So the more you track your time, the more you become aware of the sense of the time, first of all. What does it feel like to spend an hour on something? And depending on what it is, right? And then gauging whether it's a good investment for you or not, right?
Yeah, and I think people shy away from that because when they do it, then they use it as a reason to beat themselves up. Like, oh, wow, you wasted so much time on this. You're such a loser. Instead of just seeing it as neutral information.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I spent this much. Or, oh, this was this many calories. Interesting. So, I think most people would want to ignore it and just like, so I don't have to think about it. But you
Yeah.
don't have to beat yourself up about it. Just more so like be like a scientist.
Yeah. Yeah, that I like that. I like making things experiments, right? Like thinking of it as an experiment. Okay, so I'm going to test this. Let me gather the data so that I know what the result of the experiment is, and then I can make a decision at the end. Was my hypothesis correct or not?
Exactly.
That's really, really cool. So, Hailey, thank you so much for all the information you've shared. Before we part ways, because time flies when you're having awesome conversations, I want to ask you two things. First of all, do you have anything coming up, anything that you would like to invite the audience to go and connect with you on?
Yeah, I actually have two things. One is a free weekly planning system. So on this topic of time management and how to plan your week and the daily basics we talked about, and I also give you like some reflection questions every week so you can keep improving your time management. I have that available at haileyrowe.com/time planning. And also for Marcy's audience, if you want a free 2-week trial in my Work Smart membership, which is basically for service providers who want to work smarter when it comes to their marketing
Mhm.
and their offerings, You can DM me on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe with the word 2-week trial. And then I'll remember that it's Marcy's audience. And then I will send you the link.
Awesome. So 2-week trial.
Yep.
Okay, so I will add all of this to the show notes and the description on YouTube and all that. And then finally, for people who are listening to you and thinking, oh, I would love to know more about Hailey and her work and all these things aside from the freebie, where else can they connect with you? How can they stay in touch with you?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I have the free Marketing Hub Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/the Marketing Hub group. I have HaileyRowe.com, and I'm on Instagram, Hailey_Rowe. I'm on all the platforms in some way, shape, or form. So, and then the podcast I have is for coaches primarily. It's called Health Coach Nation, but that's also out there.
Awesome. Any last thoughts or I don't know, just anything that you would like to leave the audience with before we end the podcast?
I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but you mentioned your word of the year. And my word is appreciation. And that is because I want to pay attention to how awesome life is. And I also think heading into the new year, many people are going to be setting really aggressive goals and maybe giving up by like February, whatever the date is in February. There they say everybody quits at that point. And I would just suggest this year to pick a word of the year, try to live in with intention within it, and set goals. But this time use some of the tips we talked about today, where it's more doable. It's broken down into 30-minute tasks. You're evaluating every week, like what do you want to do more of, less of, etc. And hopefully this year will be different for you if you've always tended to drop your resolutions.
That sounds like a plan to me. And that's actually part of what I believe and teach as well. So thank you so much, Hailey. This was so much fun. And for anybody out there, all the information on how to connect with Hailey is Hailey. I keep messing up your name. I'm sorry. Hailey is going to be in the show notes in the description. So you can follow her, subscribe to her podcast, and just get all the cool stuff that she has out there as well as benefit from the freebies that she offered today. I hope you have found as much value and impact in this conversation as we found in creating it for you. If you have, then go ahead and share this with someone else in your life that you know might find it valuable. And in the meantime, don't forget about my offer to head on over to marciamaro.com and schedule your free 30-minute clarity and confidence call. We will talk through all your dreams, all your plans, all your goals, the things that might be getting in the way. And if it makes sense for both of us, I might invite you to join me in one of my programs or one of my coaching packages, but there's no obligation, and I promise you that this will be the best 30 minutes you've spent in a long, long time. So again, head on over to marciamaro.com, set up that time to chat, and I will see you on the other side. And in the meantime, share, subscribe, like, and I will see you next week here on Sincerely Speaking. Thank you.